It's bad out there. It is bad out there. I was a nurse for 24 years. The back and neck issues were getting to the point where the doctor said she would not sign off for any job that said I had to lift 50 pounds. I found myself a few months later on living on welfare, fighting with Social Security to get disability. It just spiraled down from there. You can't understand unless you've been there, living in poverty.
The issue of food insecurity is very personal to me because I grew up homelessness. I spent the first 6 months of my life in a homeless shelter. And first several years of my life in and out of shelters, living in poverty. And there is still, like in any American city, there's homelessness, there's poverty. A significant number of people live in poverty. And there's hunger, not just hunger, but malnutrition.
Poverty is the critical issue facing the world today. We think of the United States as a first world nation, and supposedly that means that we are one of the wealthiest nations in the world. And yet, right here in the United States, and right here in New York State, and right here in Tompkins County, there are people who are facing hunger and food insecurity. And that means that they don't know necessarily where their next meal is going to come from. That's a serious problem, and that's one that has a huge impact on our society, on the lives of many, many people.
When I went to the anti-hunger policy conference in Washington, D.C., I was around all these people that had never been food insecure, and I've never experienced that in my life. Everybody I know struggles with poverty and food insecurity, so to me, it's everywhere.
I think it's very serious. It's the most serious issue that we face because even if it's only a handful of people who have to sleep on the street, only if it's a couple dozen families who are living through food insecurity and poverty, that's too much misery.
Okay, John, you're in business.
Food insecurity? Oh yeah. I'm overweight. I'm a lot heavier than I was 3 years ago. Most of it is because of the food that I take in, the food that I can afford. No, it's not good for you, but it's all I can afford. I try to get myself bananas and strawberries. I try to get some fresh produce, but that doesn't happen. I tried putting so much of my Social Security in savings every month. It has to come back out. And it definitely is not because I'm getting stuff that's unnecessary, I'm eating out. It's just life, everyday expenses.
Yeah, I think anybody who's been poor knows that poverty is not just about wanting something and not being able to get it. It's not just about wanting the new iPhone and not being able to afford it. To be poor is to be afraid all the time, afraid that you're not going to have a place to sleep, and afraid that you're not going to have good food to eat, that your siblings aren't going to have good food to eat. And that fear it's like torture. It's cruel and unusual to live under that kind of stress.
The first 2 months walking into a food pantry and asking for help was horrible for me. I'm a giver. I always made really good money as a nurse. I could have used the food pantry food and stuff a couple months before I finally was able to make myself go. But at that point, I had no choice. It was devastating to be in that situation, but it also shows how quickly we can be in that situation. Go from going out and buying a steak whenever I want to not even being able to afford to buy a package of hot dogs. Back to the college days, eating ramen noodles an awful lot because they're still pretty cheap.
Hopefully, at some point, I will be employable again, but for now, we're using the system to get by and get better. Education, that's a big key. People sometimes just don't realize that they can get out of it. They just, for generations, they're stuck in poverty and they don't realize that there's a possibility that they could get out of poverty.
This research particularly focuses on efforts to end hunger and poverty, and we're working with the Food Bank of the Southern Tier in 6 counties here in the Southern Tier of New York State on some work that they want to do to assess the work that they're doing as a food bank and evaluate the ways that their pantries that work with the food bank are able to distribute food. And really, they're working on making a shift from being an organization that works based on a charity model to working on a social justice model.
That's different, yep. Now the cooking class, the way it works, is if you take the cooking class, you get a certificate, or you can come back in the same month.
I made it a personal goal to make sure that it's easier for folks to stay in the houses where they live. It's easier for folks to get into affordable housing when they need it. And it's easier to get into shelters when people need it. So we've built new shelters. We've built more affordable housing at Breckenridge, at Stone Quarry. We've worked with the Rescue Mission, Second Wind Cottages in Carmen Gidi to add to the number of homes that are available. When it comes to food insecurity, we've invested time and effort to raise money for the Food Bank of the Southern Tier and into Loaves and Fishes, which is a food pantry that provides for folks who live downtown and in the flats.
I feel committed to try to introduce students early on to the voices of people that are living and experiencing real social issues. And so sometimes in sociology classes or other classes, you read about poverty or you read about hunger and you read articles written by academics about those topics. In my class, I really want students to encounter firsthand what it means for people who are experiencing hunger and food insecurity and poverty.
What the Speakers Bureau is, it's classes, it was 9 weeks. The main thing is it's about getting out there and telling our story and realizing what we have to give, even though we didn't think we had anything because of our, the living in the poverty, low income, just barely getting by, but getting the story out there and bringing more people like us into the fold to be out there and advocating doesn't cost anything.
I was contacted and asked if I'd like to be a part of the Speakers Bureau, and I had no idea what it was, but it sounded very interesting, and so I signed up and got involved there. I speak at different places. I just go around and kind of tell my story and, ask that they don't cut like SNAP benefits and explain to people what I'm doing with my family, trying to raise them to not be dependent on the system.
That's different, but beyond the pantry to, you're talking about in general,
They got a job board and everything down there.
For so long, I felt alone and ashamed, and no, not so much, because I realize there are other people like me in the same boat, and I can get involved. I am involved, and I am a voice for people who can't speak. Not only does that feel good for me, my kids are proud of me. My family is proud of me. There's changes in my household, positive changes, and all because I joined the Speakers Bureau.
A quick go around. I'd love for you to say in a few words, not more than 5, something that is going well in your life.
I think Ithaca is a luckier place than most. People are a bit better off, a bit more likely to have jobs. Our unemployment rate is very low. There's not a lot of wealthy people here, but the middle class here is very broad. Giving to others who are in need is one of the best things you can do. But you can also donate time and your energy and your creativity, your talent into fixing the gaps in the system that allow people to live without the food and shelter that they need. You can go down to Loaves and Fishes and volunteer, or you can join local government where you can contribute to solutions like building more affordable housing and building community gardens and making those accessible to people.
Cleaning, which is kind of what I have done already for there, but there's just so much more about it. So that's what feels really good for me this week is that research.
Ending hunger and poverty isn't something that one single community can do because we're part of a global economy and our food system is much broader than one community, one county, one state. What we can do here locally is figure out how the experiences and the voices of people who experience poverty and hunger can contribute to our understanding of that problem. Unfortunately, those are the voices, those are the people who were really often systematically left out of the research, left out of the conversations, left out of the political sphere when people are discussing how to end poverty and hunger. And who else would like to volunteer? Luke, come on up. Okay.
Find some way to get involved in any kind of capacity. You'll feel better about yourself, people will feel better about you, and doors will open up for you. Be a voice for others who can't speak for themselves.
Meaning go beyond the number of pounds of food delivered to the kinds of additional services
like the ones that Jackie and I and one of the ladies here in the Speakers Bureau have had that help us step up out of poverty.
I say, in Ithaca especially, reach out for help. The face of hunger might surprise you. The people who you pass on the street who rely on government assistance, help from the churches, help from the community. I mean, these people are everywhere. There are nurses, there are teachers, there are retirees, there are grandparents. There is no shame. There is only wisdom in reaching out and asking for help. And that you don't have to live in fear. That if you come out of the shadows, people will be there for you. That's been my experience.